do you still have concerns that you may go back into addiction at this point in time?
No.
Yeah.
No, I haven't. Look, I don't even, since I came in, I don't even miss the drugs. It's like, because I made a decision, you know. I think when you make a really firm decision that this is what I'm going to do,
Yeah.
it just makes the whole process easier.
Yeah.
So that part of it has been that's been the easiest part, really.
Yeah. So what do you mind if I just probe a little bit deeper into that? And
Sure.
you know, it gets a little bit personal, and there may be no answers in this regards that I'm just bringing up, but from your experience, because as you said, you've been there once before, and then something happened, and then you got back into it, and what do you think, have you identified within yourself and the circumstances you were in that might have helped either promote, I know someone's probably already asked you this question, but I'm just asking you so I can understand as well, what might have, not so much triggered, because trigger's a pretty simplistic word, because normally it's not just one thing, because if you goof up and just for one thing, and then you can just get back up and keep going. But normally it's a little bit more insidious than that. It's like it sort of creeps up, it sort of creeps in, and then before you know it, that's where you are. You're in a place where you don't want to be. So have you been able to, and have you thought about it, what might have precipitated that, either within yourself or within the outside circumstances, or both? Probably both.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah. Well, I think, to be honest, the last time I came in, I was partnered, and I mean, I was just kind of like, and that partnership was fairly, well, I could say new. I mean, prior to that, I'd been in a 17-year relationship. So when that failed, I just kind of spiraled out of control. But I'm very aware that particularly with relationships with partners, I generally have one lined up ready to go before I enter the one that I'm in. So I'm very dependent on other people. But when I was here last time, I was aware of all that, and I did to some extent, and I was aware of the toxicity of the relationship. Like, not that he was, you know, violent or anything like that. He was quite lovely, really. But I was aware of the huge amount of issues that were going to come with my going back into that environment, and I did try to exit the relationship, but you know, I have this old I have noticed there's a lot of repeating of the same things that have happened in my life over and over. So, you know, there's this wanting to rescue people and thinking I can fix everybody, and that and I guess too, because I've never been on my own, there was a real fear of you know, standing on my own 2 feet and being independent. So the relationship kind of went a bit sour before I left here, because, you know, I discovered that I wasn't the only female in his life and things like that. So that was quite painful for me to, you know, I've never had to deal with that kind of shit before. So that was really difficult.
Yeah.
And normally I'd run for the hills. In this case, I went back thinking that, you know, I have to fix this. You know, this can't happen to me, and I'm going to make him love me so much that he's not going to want to look at anybody else. You know, it was all that bullshit, really. But once I got there, and I did, I feel like I gave 110%, even though I was on drugs, so I wasn't really available emotionally a lot of the time. But I still cared about this person and his family. But I got to a point where, and quite early on actually after I left here, where I started to feel like things just became very clear. Like I felt like I could see through the bullshit that was going on around me. Like, so I could clearly see that what people were saying weren't matching their actions, and you know, and I'm not getting any younger. So, and I, you know, and I had conversation after conversation with my partner about how I was feeling. I was very honest. And I never took away from the fact that I was a drug addict. You know, I always knew that, yep, that's an issue for me. That's my issue. But the issue with the relationship was that I was being enabled to some extent. There was a very good acceptance of my drug using. So, you know, obviously there were payoffs in that regard for that, for my partner. But I just felt like I'd taken a step back, like I'd stepped into something that was quite toxic, and that, you know, I quickly realised that it was too much for me. It was just too much for me. And so I decided a few months before I even got here, like I started making the phone calls and taking the steps to getting in here. I kind of knew that I was going to, and I had this yearning to be more than what I was. Like, I feel like I'm at this point in my life where I can be so much more than just a drug addict. And if I don't step into that right now, I feel like it might be lost forever, because, you know, I just don't feel like I have the energy to keep doing it all. And I still have 3 really beautiful children who look up to me, and, well, you know, maybe not so much when I was using, but, you know, they were always there for me and always hopeful that I'd get better again. And so, you know, there are a lot of reasons for me to, you know, look, I've just jumped off the building and thought, and I feel like I'm in the descent part of the jumping off the building, and I haven't hit the ground, but I'm just allowing myself to fall. So I'm scared, but I'm quite happy that I'm going to just step into the fear and take a risk.
Yeah.
And that's not something I've ever done before. This is all it's really new, but it's exciting. and I have, and I keep saying to people, like, my whole life, I feel like I've had guidance from the divine or whatever, but I feel like I've always had something to some extent watching over me or protecting me and guiding me to where I am today. So, and I just can't ignore that anymore. So I feel like it's like, you know, I just can't keep doing what I've been doing. And plus I was so unhappy, you know, I knew that the relationship was toxic, and I deliberately stepped back into that. So to be honest, the whole environment didn't have a huge impact on my life, because I've seen toxic relationships before, and I was raised in a toxic family. So it was all in fact, it was quite familiar to me. I was very comfortable in it to some extent. But having had moments in my life where I've not been in a toxic relationship, where I've been in a healthy relationship, and I've been happy, it's very hard to step back into something that's toxic when you've had a taste of something that's better, you know?
Yep.
So I kind of felt like I was doing myself a huge injustice by allowing myself to step back into that. But I think the greatest challenge for me now, really, is find it, like, you know, maybe putting all that energy that I used to put into these relationships into myself. So I struggle with that. I find it much easier to focus on fixing other people.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to divert my energy into myself rather than into what, you know, other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's probably my big challenge, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm in there. Well, I think I am some days.
Yep.
You know,
I
don't know if any of that made sense.
It makes perfect sense. It makes. I was. Thank you for sharing that, and I know that wasn't easy for you to do that, because I could hear it in your voice that it's uncomfortable to revisit
Yeah.
chronologically things that were, as you, in your words, toxic or dysfunctional. So when you do that, you will feel some of that uncomfortable feeling as well. So thank you for sharing that. And I know that that was a challenge for you. I just made notes as you were going through saying what you were saying, sort of bringing out, highlighting the key points. Well, the key points, as far as I could tell, anyway. All I can do is reflect back some of the things that you've been saying, and maybe in that process of reflecting back, and with my encouragement and support, help you even go a little bit deeper, or get a different perspective on some of the things that you were saying. Because let's be honest here, and in many ways, and you've said it yourself, particularly right towards the end there, that you don't want to do yourself an injustice. That was your words, and what you've become aware of. And by the way, I just wanted to say, the way that you articulated yourself then showed a lot of self-awareness. I just really wanted to say that, and that's good. But then you can have all the self-awareness in the world, but you then have to act on it. you have to put some. Well, what are the next steps? Because I don't think you're a monkess, like a female monk. I don't know what the female word of a monk is. Maybe it's a nun. I don't know, but I can't. Even Maria from The Sound of Music had to struggle with that. She realized that, there was all that sort of conflict going on at one particular point in time, but you're comfortable and you have gifts, and you know those gifts, and you intuitively understand them. And there's a part of you, particularly when you said you feel like it's an injustice. So it's an injustice to yourself if you don't utilize those gifts. And we are all like that. It will eat us up. It will tear us up. It will send us down the path of bitterness and despair if we don't give it our best shot to bring forth our gifts and use them. And sometimes and of course, you don't know all your gifts yet. We don't know that. And a lot of our gifts and things that we're good at and what we can do to bring joy to ourselves and to others, sometimes we only discover serendipitously, like we just come across them by accident almost. But the difference is you can ignore it or you can go with it. And that happens a lot. So it happens a lot in many people, but there aren't that many times in our own life where, and you were expressing it so well, that you've decided to, in some ways, jump off the cliff, and you're in a sort of a free fall at the moment. And there's fear associated with that, but there's also excitement. And the excitement is the thing that will help you actually move forward. The fear, of course, is the thing that holds you back, but that's a tension. That tension between the excitement and the fear is the space that you're in, and that will help you stay awake. So don't be too in a hurry to, No,
I'm not.
to
I'm not.
psychologically, we have all sorts of names for that. And I think I was talking to you about cognitive dissonance the other day. So I'm not saying you have cognitive dissonance at the moment, but sometimes, when you're pulled in several directions at once and it feels fatiguing, annoying, distressing, and even depressing at times, it is a process that's helping us take stock of things and helping us wake up. It's a stimulus so
I'm glad to, you say all those, that fear and distress and all that. Like, to be perfectly honest, And I mean, I have had moments where I get scared. I can feel a bit overwhelmed, thinking, "Oh God," that's usually when I'm projecting a lot into the future.
Yeah.
That I don't know about what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I try not to do that. But while I'm just living day to day,
Yeah.
to be honest, I kind of feel like since I've done this I feel like things, even though there are bumps along the way, and the bumps, when I say bumps, I mean having to deal with my own feelings, like mostly in regards to how I feel about myself. But the little bumps along the way, they're not huge mountains. And I feel like even though I'm in this descent, I feel like I'm in flow as well. Like it's like,
yeah,
because I've kind of surrendered. It's like, well, you
yeah,
know, my life can't get any worse, Hart, you know.
yeah, yeah,
I have
right.
no home. I mean,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So I kind of feel like, well, it's a bit like I have a new canvas, and I can just go from here. It's like all that stuff from, I mean, I've learned a lot from my life, don't get me wrong, but even that last relationship, as much as there are parts of it that still, you know, cause me to feel pain, like I can't, because I'm getting older too, I think I've matured a little bit. So I tend to look for the lessons in everything that I'm experiencing.
Yeah.
But there's got to be a reason why I'm experiencing this. I have to learn something from it. So
Yeah.
I try to look at it like, I try to look at everything like it's just a lesson. It's not, you know, something trying to hurt me or the world's all against me. It's that I'm meant to be learning something, hopefully, so that I'll become a better person.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So I don't stress much.
That's let me I can relate to everything that you're saying. You let's just change tack for a minute. One of the things I was thinking, and because I realized today's class was probably going to be exactly like it is right now, just a class, just a conversation between you and myself. So I was reflecting upon what's important, and not sort of drilling into you and trying to understand you or anything like that, but what is important to be whole and to be able to move forward in a way that you want to, and unleash all your gifts as much as you possibly can and get to know them and all that. And that is that you have to be able to support yourself. And that's really, and that's harder. I don't know if it's harder, actually. I can't even say that because I don't know. But it's hard as we get older, perhaps. But in reality, though, and I read once that a man, and I assume that a similar thing would apply to a woman, because you know all the literature has all been so skewed towards bloody men in the last 20,000 years. So you know things are changing, obviously, but it's only really recently that they've begun to change. Although women have been thinking about this, I'm sure, for the last 20,000 years as well. In that, well, we don't really come into our full capacity until we're around 60 years old. And that particular statement relates to a person's earning capacity. That's what I'm trying to say. And it's counterintuitive because, you know, a lot of people think, oh, I've got to get it all together before I'm 65 or something like that. Save some money because I'm not going to have a job. I'm not going to be able to work. I won't have anything to offer. Well, mate, look around you. You know, the president of the United States nearly bloody 80 years old. I mean, you know, it's like, it's just not true. And that may not be a good example, but there's, you know, what, and you, and you said it yourself, there's wisdom that comes with age, but also there's experience and there's a perspective that you have acquired and are particularly acquiring right now, where you're getting to know yourself. And you said before, you've gotten to the point where you just can see the bullshit going on around you. You don't have to have someone standing beside you and saying, well, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. You already know it. And you already know if you're saying something that's bullshit as well. So it's like, hey, you know, Whereas, when you're just starting out in life, there's many things that can confuse us,
Oh,
and we don't know. There's so many things.
yeah.
But I mean, you've had a family, you've got three loving children. It's like there's so many things that are good for you. So sometimes through this process, at least even as a cognitive exercise, look at the good things that have actually happened in your life.
Yeah.
Um, and um,
Yeah.
and then we can. So, but what I'm trying to say too in this overall thing is that somehow, and maybe you don't know what it is, but somehow you need to. We all need to get to a point where we can actually look after ourselves, and it may be, and I've resigned to that fact. There's not some rich widow that I'm out there looking for who's going to support me for the rest of my life. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Because I'm just not interested in it, but also
Yes.
I'm, you know, I, I've come to do all the things that I'm describing to you. I've come to try and many things have happened in my life, particularly in the last decade. And I'm going to be 66 in a few weeks. So it's like
Wow.
I'm still surprised that there are new things and exciting things that I can learn, but not just that. Things that can actually then be turned into a way of supporting me financially,
Yeah.
and it's like
Yeah.
things I just wouldn't have thought of. If you had have said to me a year ago, you're going to be running online classes at a facility and actually get paid for it while you're sitting in your office and they can't see you, but you might have your pajamas on underneath, it's like, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
but it's interesting and I'm just talking about me here as an example, but when Freeman House shut down the facility, not letting anyone else in, sort of thing, and not letting me in as well to conduct any classes with the people who were still there. I was told that in one day, and of course, because I enjoy it so much, I invest a lot into it. It utilizes a lot of the gifts and talents I have. I've identified that, and that's not coming from an ego point of view. I'm just saying that that's there. Well, I got depressed, very depressed for a day at least.
Yes.
It's like, and there was an earning capacity there as well, of course. So it's like, oh my God. I was actually more concerned about the fact, well, I'm struggling with, a lot of the meaning I get from life has almost been taken away from me. But then in addition to that was also some financial capacity. So, but it's really interesting, Anne, that will happen to us, and the environment that we're in at the moment with the world, that's in some ways, I think, and that's more realistic, that there are no guarantees about anything. If you want to go and enroll in
Yeah.
a course and expect the guarantee
Yeah.
that you'll be able to get work
Yeah.
at the end of it, well, maybe you will, maybe you won't. So what is the beacon? What is your
Yeah.
navigating light that would make you even invest in learning something new, or going off and inquiring and seeing about some other work maybe that you've never done? Well, I think, and this is again, I'm biased here because this is pretty much what I've always done in my life, and that is default back to what brings me joy, or what I can
Yeah.
relate to, what I can understand. And I know that, and that has served me well in many, throughout my whole life, because then the
Yeah.
momentum that I have is then fueled not by just the fact that I go to a job and they pay me something and I can go and buy some food, because that gets boring pretty quickly.
Passionate.
But yeah, but by the fact that, somehow I'm connecting and utilizing something that I enjoy to some degree, and that there'll be some growth in that. I'll feel that I'll get better at it the more that I do it, and that's a useful thing. So all of that. So there'll be bumps and hurdles along the way, and that's exactly what happened to me. So like you, I've been self-aware a lot of my own reactions to things, and that's a useful thing because you can develop some objectivity for yourself. So I knew it's not right to be depressed, but you can't talk yourself out of that per se. so, uh, uh, so I then switched my thinking into thinking, well, what can I do about this? This is shocking. I don't like this. But once I, and you sort of have to let yourself go through a little period of distress. In other words, feeling it. You got to allow yourself to, and that's a very uncomfortable thing. And please take this for what it's worth, that will keep happening to us, of course, but you will develop more resilience as you come out the other side. Like, I know that I've had things, particularly in relationships, that have been I've done something or said something or gotten angry or something like that, or the other person has. And in the past, I mean only 10 years ago or 5 years ago, it would take me 3 days to get over it. I'd be moping around like, well, pretty much like a child, really, who hasn't gotten their own way and doesn't know what to do about it. And then eventually the clouds would part and I'd come out of it and blah, 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 and move on. So, but what actually happens after a while, that time period of 3 days gets smaller and smaller if you stick with it. If you allow yourself to feel deeply what it is that you're feeling, build up a little bit more self-knowledge, self-awareness of yourself, and then move on. Because the key point is to move on. Now, as that time gets shorter and shorter and you move on, you develop a very incredible process called self-efficacy, meaning that you realize you've survived. You haven't relapsed and gone off and done something stupid. You've stuck with the uncomfortableness, the distress, and perhaps even the sheer terror of what you're going through, and you're waiting to come out the other side. And in that process, if you survive that, then for some reason, I can't explain why, that period gets shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. The whole thing may never go away in your life. There'll always be, perhaps, maybe not, but perhaps, I'm trying to be more realistic here, a situation that'll, to put it bluntly, knock you on your ass. So you're down. So what are you going to do about it? So you might even say that's one of the core things of mindfulness. To try and not judge yourself in that process and not react accordingly. They're the sort of the tenets. That's easily said, of course, but then to actually keep putting that into practice, then you develop that resilience. You realize you've survived a very uncomfortable, distressing situation for yourself. The time gap gets shorter and shorter and shorter. You might say these days, what used to take me 3 days might only take me an hour now. So I haven't exercised the beast inside of me completely that causes me to feel so, crazily distressed or whatever, or abandoned or neglected or feeling alone or ignored. All of those things still there. But on the other side of that distress, life goes on. And now I've come to see, well, that's exactly what happens, because of that resilience and that self-efficacy that we've built up over that time. So does that make sense, sort of that stuff I'm talking about?
Yeah, it does. And that's the part about growing older that I'm learning to is that, you know, it's not all doom and gloom. Because I was just saying to, I forgot his name that works here. Anyway,
Ollie, Tony?
Oliver.
Oliver.
Yeah, I was talking to him yesterday, and, you know, we kind of got on, I sort of mentioned that I struggle with not the idea of growing old, but the fact that, you know, my whole appearance is changing. So, and that's, I mean, that's an area I haven't had to really think about before, because, you know, I always was, you know, I was like, well, I wasn't getting any older. Well, I was younger then before. So, but as I've come out of ice addiction, and because ice, you know, it impacts on your overall appearance and your health. And so when you stop using ice, you look in the mirror, and like when you're on ice, you think everything's beautiful and you're gorgeous, and, you know, it's crap really. But when you come out of it, you see what's really going on, and it's a bit confronting. So we were talking about, and it's a bit superficial, but I was talking to him yesterday about how I struggle with looking in the mirror and I'm seeing wrinkles, and I'm seeing that I'm starting to age, and, you know, so, and I mean, but, you know, I'm reminded every day that it's not as bad as I can sometimes, like some days I can really feel like crap about it. But the thing is, I take myself to, like, a good example is the meditation group that I go to, the Buddhist meditation, where it's silent meditation, and it's lovely. But the majority of the ladies that attend there are all my age and older. And I look at them and I think, wow, they don't look bad, you know, they look quite comfortable in their own skin. And so, you know, I think, you know, it's okay, we'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
But it's the getting there that some days it's harder than others, you know, because it's almost like I'm grieving for the young version of myself occasionally. And I don't mean in the sense of maturity with, you know, how I think and feel. It's about how and it's a bit superficial, I know, but it's how I look that I struggle with, that I think, wow, I'm really starting to feel my age. You know, I'm starting to look my age, and at the same time, I mean, you know, I can flip it if I focus on, you know, for example, I mean, I look at my daughters and I just think, I mean, I'm so ridiculously proud of them, and they're all absolutely stunning girls. And, you know, when they come to see me, they don't see what I see. They see the same mum that I've always been, you know, so they don't see the wrinkles or the, you know, and they love me regardless of how I look. And their acceptance of me is helping me to move in the direction of accepting myself, you know, because, I mean, it happens to everybody, you know. I just never thought about it with me until I'm now looking in the mirror and thinking, wow. But, you know, I've been a bit distracted for the last 8 years with ice addiction, and you know, you kind of don't see it happening until you get off drugs, and then you think, wow. Yeah. I've really aged. It's really aged me. So I think there's a lot. I'm working on acceptance of myself as a whole. I mean, I can deal with the emotional stuff easier than I can with my physical changes. Yeah. If that makes sense. I know that's probably.
Well, in some ways, that's emotional.
It's not that I'm. Yeah. But I'm, you know, there are parts about getting older that I absolutely love. Yeah. You know, I mean, I get to see grandchildren now, and they're just wonderful. I mean, there's a lot of pleasure in getting older, and my kids come to me for advice or, you know, things like that. So there are benefits to my not being as young as I used to be. Yeah.
Well, absolutely.
It's not all.
Yeah, that's right. You get, like we said, you get to see the things that you, the little piles of poo here and there that you don't want to step in. Whereas when you're young, you don't even recognise that they're piles of poo. So, just
oh, look.
we're very blessed as humans, particularly because relatively to a lot of animals in the world, we live quite a long time. Our capacity to live to 100 years and more is inbuilt into us. It's quite extraordinary. So with that comes the process of aging slowly, meaning that our appearance doesn't change overnight, but and in some ways you've been given, you've been on holiday. Did you ever read that book by Oscar Wilde called The Picture of Dorian Gray? Have you heard of that book? Oh, right.
No,
It's a
I
famous
haven't.
it's a famous work of literature where this young man got this artist to paint a picture of himself, and it was some sort of magic involved, and I think he sort of made a pact with the devil actually, to say, and what actually happened was that the picture would age, but he wouldn't, so he just stayed young in appearance the whole time, and that's what the whole story was about. And of course, something unravels towards the end there where it has to go back to normal. And all of a sudden, almost overnight, he ages and looks pretty old. Well, that's completely artificial, of course. But in some ways, we do that. I mean, if you go on a hiatus, on a holiday, by taking a substance that detaches you from reality, well, that's pretty much exactly the same thing. So luckily, you haven't been off planet for too long, and you're coming back to Earth now, which is good. And the bump that you'll feel, that, as you were just so eloquently describing, is that, oh, there I am. That's me.
Yes.
So, so yeah, there'll be a little bit of an adjustment period. But the other thing I was thinking too, Anne, when you were talking, because hey, we're all, I know it's a bit of a cliche. We're all, because of the virus at the moment. They're saying we're all in this together. Well, we are. The attributes that we have of aging, we're all in this together, meaning that no one's exempt. And I can completely relate. When I look at myself and I see that now I've got two chins instead of one, I thought, oh my God. But luckily it's crept up slowly, and, and everything I try to do to lose a little bit of weight around my abdomen is a major challenge. So, whereas it wasn't a few years ago. So things change, But you know what? When I look in the mirror, and even now when I'm conducting this class, I can see myself and I can see you. What really excites me, and I don't mean to sound too narcissistic, but in regards to myself, is the fact that I feel alive when what I'm doing is looking in my eyes. I don't really look. Yes, I do. When I see one of my nose hairs coming out and curling around and trying to get into my ear, I get that, and you have to deal with that. But the, the general thing that's exciting to us, and I think that's what excites you about other people, is actually the life force that's eminent behind their eyes, that's coming from there. And when you see, and that's what you see, I think, when you said you noticed the other people, correct me if I'm wrong, in the yoga class, you're actually seeing that there, and you sort of said that, well, you feel like they're okay, they're aging okay. Well, what you're seeing, and I think you can catch yourself out, you're actually looking at what their consciousness, you're looking at what's going on with them. Who are they? Looking in their eyes. And that's what's exciting. That's what excites us. And it's very interesting that the cues we get, the subtleties of the communication that happens when we are able to look in someone's eye is quite profound, but it's very subtle. So we're almost scanning around us all the time for those cues and looking for people who appear to be together, to appear to have some peace in their life. that have some joy, that have some
Yeah.
stability, have some calmness. And the way that we get some of it, of course, from their body language, but a lot we get just by a 1 second glance in their eye. And all of a sudden, you
Yeah.
recognize someone else who's something's happening beautifully inside of themselves. And when that happens,
Yeah.
then something becomes awakened inside of yourself as well. And something in you says, I want that.
Exactly right.
I want more of that.
You're
Whatever he's
absolutely,
got or she's got,
yeah,
how are they doing that?
yeah,
So, yeah, and that's possible.
yes,
And
yeah,
so, but that's an aspect of clarity, and that
yeah,
takes some when you realize that, and then you can make that more and more a priority in your own life, and so that helps in many ways determine the direction that you're going to go in from here. You have to be able to prioritize what's important to
yeah,
you, not because I'm saying it or anyone's
yeah,
saying it or what you've read or whatever. And it's not always the outside thing. It's not the fact that these people are all doing yoga, so you're going to devote yourself to yoga for the rest of your life. Maybe you will, and that's completely fine if that's your thing, and that's what you relate to. But it's more important, I think, to be able to find your own what
yeah.
excites you, and that will help drive you forward as well. So
Look, I know it'll come to me,
yeah,
I actually feel pretty good overall,
that's great. Yeah,
My life isn't that bad. Yeah, my life's pretty good. And I guess, like Dean said it last night at the meeting, that he was talking about how, he's very aware that, being here at Freeman, we're in a safe environment, it's almost like a bubble.
yeah,
And I used to say the same thing when I was in rehabs, and I understand exactly what he's saying because I've felt the same in the past.
mm,
I don't necessarily feel like I'm living in a bubble right now. But we are in an environment, and I'm in an environment where I feel like I feel very safe here.
yeah,
So, but this environment is what I'm going to use to help propel me back into the community,
yeah,
and hopefully
yeah,
into, taking my first step to becoming the person that I've always dreamt of being. I mean,
yeah,
living on my own and supporting myself and doing all those wonderful things that I think, and I'm excited about that.
yeah,
But I'm certainly not in any rush.
yeah,
I'm happy to take it and
yeah,
do it at a pace that, hopefully is building a strong foundation. I don't want to rush it. I don't feel the need, like Dean, because he's younger too, and he was saying how he's just can't wait to get out there and test the waters. Well, I've been there and tested the waters, so I'm quite happy to take it slow
yeah,
and just ease into it, because, it's going to be, well, I hope it's going to be the beginning of something new, and
yeah,
I want it to last. I want to have a good, strong foundation when I do that. So
yeah,
I'm not in any rush, that's for sure.
yeah, yeah. So I
Yeah,
think you already are doing a lot of those things. So take account of your inner life, which you obviously are. And we're going to be talking more and more about that, of course, during the mindfulness classes. So good on you. You do need a buffer, and in many ways, you're very fortunate. You're on the select few of all the people in Armidale and Australia who have a buffer like Freeman House at the moment. That is a buffer. It is
yeah,
absolutely a buffer. So as you said, if you're
yeah,
in free fall, you don't want to land on the rocks, and you don't want to land in shark infested waters. So,
yeah,
when you do land, and Freeman House is providing you with a safe landing, let's put it that way. And it is
I
important,
feel
by
it.
the way, you can mention to Dean, he's a and I'm just saying this because I know Dean, and and I like Dean. We see each other sometimes in the street, say hello. He doesn't have to be so extremist about it. You can actually prepare yourself by using the word going out there. I mean, you can, the best way to prepare yourself is to go and get some sort of work, whether it's paid work or volunteer work.
Yeah.
That is actually a really good way, whether it's stacking shelves at Woolies. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just getting you out there.
I think he's on.
What's that?
Yeah, he's on the path. He's actually I think he's enrolled in a course and he's looking at volunteering, and which is great,
Yeah. So you don't have to put it all up.
No, that's right. And I mean, he's doing really well,
Yeah.
And we're fortunate, even though it's a small group, generally we all get along pretty good.
Oh, that's good.
Which is lovely.
I noticed that. So that is, it's like a family, really, in many ways. So, and we need that. That's another buffer that we need. There's financial buffers, but there's also emotional buffers in sport, and that is completely fine and completely acceptable. If I could make a couple of suggestions for yourself there, one of the things in knowing your history, particularly in regards to some of the substances you were taking that you've told me about, what I can suggest there is that you find something you like that works your brain. You need, obviously you need to look after your body and all that sort of stuff, and that's what we're talking about. We'll talk about that on Friday. But your particular thing and it relates to where you've been in the last 10 years, you need to reactivate some of your brain. And I'm getting almost talking physiologically here. And that is not easy, and that is challenging. And you probably already notice certain cognitive deficits that you occasionally experience, and whatever they are. Well, that's just completely a consequence, completely normal in regards to where you've been. That's what happens. So, but what you then need to figure out and understand, and I can help with this, is, well, what do you then do to reactivate, and in some ways even repair some of what's happened on that level? Because you need all your faculties, to be able to experience joy, to be independent, to stand on your own 2 feet, to weather the storms that come at us, and to actually even just experience joy and bliss. You need to have all your wits about you. You need to have your faculties. So, and I don't mean to be confronting, but it would be remiss of me, and it would be silly to ignore that, because if you ignore it and sweep it under the carpet, you will find yourself in situations out there in the world where people aren't like your family, and they aren't as kind, perhaps, and the differences between yourself and them will become more obvious and more pronounced. So that, and we all have differences, but you need to have everything you can for yourself firing at maximum capacity. It needs to be optimal, because life demands that of us. It's not like, I'll just go work on 2 cylinders and be okay. Yeah, of course you can do that. Of course you can get by, but you're not really fully participating in all the potentials that will come. There's a lot of possibilities that will actually be presented to you. So I'm just talking really, again, physiologically here, not so much psychologically or spiritually or anything like that. So that's an aspect to keep working on. And how? Do something. Not theoretical, actual. So you actually, like, either you go and work will really fry your brain if it's not working properly. It's intense. So that's one thing. The other thing, of course, is to learn something. And that will also fry your brain
Yes.
initially if you're not used to it, because there's a process that you have to go through, not only of just learning new things, but learning how to use what you've got, and get it fired up again. So all of that. So try and do something and stay. And an area that you will want to go into is completely personal to you. So pay attention to the quiet voice inside of you that says, geez, I like that. I'm curious about that. I've never really done that. I
Yeah.
don't really know much about that, but there's something about that that attracts me. It draws me in. And it might
Yeah.
be just the most
Yeah.
simplest thing, and you don't know. So there's serendipity involved in that, but there's also a process of staying awake and listening to your own interests, and then responding to them in some way, rather than just ignoring
Yeah.
them and just getting on, and
Yeah.
look at how much time you're wasting during the day. I'm not saying you're wasting time, but we all waste time. So look at how much of that is that. Take stock of that, and
Yes.
and then figure out
Yeah.
what else could I be doing here, and I'm not saying don't relax and don't sleep and don't meditate. Of course, they're really important things, but take stock of those things.
Yeah.
You okay?
I will do that. Yeah, I'm
Anything
good.
on the horizon
I'm
that
very.
you are interested in, or a direction you might want to go in, or anything? Not at the moment?
No, I'm
That's
pretty
all right.
happy. Just no, I'm good.
Just finding out. Okay.
Yeah.
Enjoying the
Thank you, Hart.
That's all right.
I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to say anything else, or would you like to just leave that for today?
Yeah, that sounds good. And we'll leave it for today.
Yeah.
We've been